We spend our entire lives trying to build something solid, a career, a reputation, an identity. But there's a quiet anxiety haunting the background of it all, the feeling that under enough pressure, everything we've built could simply crack and collapse. To keep that anxiety at bay, we rely on default instincts. We hoard wealth to buy a buffer against disaster. We fight for status to ensure we aren't left behind. We cling to strict societal rules, hoping that if we play things perfectly, the chaos will pass us by. The Book of Psalms describes the inevitable failure of these external safeguards. When sudden ruin arrives, all that frantic effort leaves us completely stuck, sinking in what the text calls the mud and mire. The fragile, makeshift foundation within us poses a greater threat than the external storm. Faced with insurmountable odds, the ancient writers ask a deeply human question. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? We instinctively look for better circumstances, more money, a better job, a safer location. The text, however, demands a total internal overhaul. These ancient blueprints frame resilience as an internal achievement, the result of treating the human mind and spirit like a rigorous architectural project. Surviving life's unpredictability requires abandoning conventional human logic entirely. To build something that actually lasts, you have to follow a totally counterintuitive, upside-down blueprint. Demolition comes first. A secure structure cannot sit on top of a rotting foundation. This is the exact problem a religious leader named Nicodemus runs into when he visits Jesus at night. Jesus tells him that to see the kingdom of God, he must be born again. Nicodemus is completely baffled, asking how a grown man can re-enter his mother's womb. Nicodemus misses the point. Slapping new moral rules or behavioral modifications onto an old, self-centered worldview is a recipe for failure. The flesh only gives birth to flesh. The texts describe a master architect who sees right through the drywall. Psalm 139 states that this creator perceives every anxious thought, hidden motive, and structural flaw within us. Rebuilding a life from the ground up requires the total demolition of human ego and self-reliance, allowing the heart to be reconstructed by a higher power. Once the site is cleared, the construction begins. The behavioral mechanics required for this new foundation are laid out in the Sermon on the Mount. These rules are counterintuitive. The teachings command followers to bless those who curse them, love their enemies, and lend without expecting repayment. This subverts evolutionary instincts. The entire weight of life now rests on the load-bearing pillars of mercy, humility, and peacemaking. Jesus repeatedly uses a specific rhetorical formula to hammer this home. You have heard that it was said, but I tell you. He takes the established measure of righteousness and moves the goalposts inward. External performance is a low bar. Avoiding the physical act of murder or adultery is simple compared to policing the hidden anger or quiet lust that sits behind the eyes. Structural integrity depends on the internal governance of our private desires, rather than the goodness we project to society. Adopting this radical internal wisdom still leaves a person vulnerable to suffering. The Psalms offer no illusions. They openly acknowledge that even the faithful walk through fire and water and find themselves surrounded by troubles without number. This all builds to the climactic parables The Builders, where Jesus describes two men who construct their houses using completely different methods. One builder digs deep and lays his foundation on solid rock, the person who hears these teachings and puts them into practice. The other builds his house right on the ground with no foundation, the one who listens but does nothing. Then comes the sobering equalizer. A violent flood strikes the valley, and the torrent slams into both houses equally, proving that righteousness leaves the floodwaters unimpeded. The storm comes for everyone. This countercultural wisdom provides something more durable than a trouble-free life. It builds an unshakable soul that remains standing when the storms